Welcome back to Audible Archives. I'm Rob, your host, guiding you into another descent into the heart of Ashford. Tonight, a desperate maid, a perfect servant, and a household of velvet secrets draw Detective Drake Vane into a case where every truth is wrapped in silk and every kindness cuts like a knife. This is the Carrington affairs. Before we begin, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, because in Ashford, no story ends clean, and you won't want to miss what comes next. Rain slicked the tram lines outside Ashford core, each droplet catching the yellow of gas lamps before dripping into the cracks of cobblestones. From his window above the tea shop, Drake Vane watched the blur of umbrellaed shapes pushing through the night. He'd been at his desk longer than he'd realized, the brass watch with the hairline crack ticking past midnight. The case files spread before him were ordinary enough: petty thefts, a dockside stabbing, the kind of grime Ashford produced daily. But it was the letter on top that kept his cigarette burning low. The handwriting was immaculate, the kind that belonged to someone taught in a finishing school, not a factory floor. Detective Vane, you do not know me, but I know of you. I believe I am in danger. Not from strangers, but from within the house where I serve. Please come. Please. Liza. No surname. No address, only a meeting place. Street Catherine's tram stop, 1 o'clock sharp. It was the kind of desperate note he'd seen before, the kind that ended with a runaway returning sheepish, or worse, with a body fished from the canals. Still, something in the neatness of the letters unsettled him. A cry for help written with such restraint spoke of someone forced to measure every word. At 1 o'clock, Drake stood beneath the iron arch of St. Catherine's stop. The rain had softened to mist, street lamps casting halos. The trams had ceased for the night, leaving only the dripping silence of stone and steel. That's when he heard it, the quick, clipped footsteps of a woman approaching. She emerged from the fog, young, slight, face pale against the black of her cloak. Her eyes darted before fixing on his. She looked like someone who hadn't slept in days. "You came," she whispered. "Eliza." She nodded. "I haven't much time. If they knew I was here." "Slow down." Drake's voice was steady, quiet. "Who's they?" She glanced back over her shoulder, then leaned closer. "The house. The mistress. The perfect maid. None of it is what it seems." Drake studied her. Start from the beginning. But she never had the chance. A carriage rumbled out of the mist, horses slick with rain, lamps blazing. Eliza froze, eyes wide with terror. Then, before Drake could stop her, she bolted. "Eliza!" She ran into the fog, skirts flashing, vanishing between the dripping hedges that lined the avenue. The carriage slowed, almost deliberately, and for a moment Drake saw the outline of a figure inside, a face pale behind glass, watching. Then the whip cracked, and the horses surged forward, leaving only wet silence in their wake. Eliza was gone. Drake stood alone on the slick stones, the night pressing in close. The letter still burned in his pocket. Somewhere in Ashford, a maid feared for her life. Somewhere, a household hid secrets wrapped in velvet and silver polish. And now it was his problem. He lit another cigarette and exhaled into the mist. "All right, Eliza," he muttered. "Let's see who you're really running from." The rain left Ashford washed but never clean. Drake's boots tracked mud through the front hall of the Carrington estate the next morning. A place so immaculate it could have been frozen in glass. The housekeeper, a stern figure with silver hair pinned in a crown, watched him like an insect had wandered across her marble floor. "Detective Vane," she said, her tone clipped, as though the title itself were distasteful. "The mistress receives you in the drawing room. Follow me, please, and do try not to drip." Drake didn't apologize. His steel-gray eyes flicked over the hall as he walked. The shine of the parquet floor, the dustless corners, the way each portrait had been polished until the eyes looked freshly painted. Perfection everywhere. Too perfect. The drawing room was no less precise. A fire burned low, lauds arranged in a symmetry that felt deliberate. Seated on a velvet settee was Lady Margaret Carrington, mid-40s, her gown understated but costly, pearls at her throat. Her gaze was sharp enough to cut rope. "Detective," she said, her smile cool. How unusual to have the police at my door without scandal to invite them. That depends, Drake replied. I received a letter from one of your staff. A girl named Eliza. Lady Carrington's smile never wavered, though her fingers tightened slightly on her teacup. Eliza, she said, rolling the name slowly. Yes, she left us quite suddenly. Vanished in the night. Ungrateful, really, after all this house did for her. Drake lowered himself into the chair opposite. When? 2 nights ago. She packed nothing, said nothing. Just gone. She thought she was in danger, Drake said. For the first time, Lady Carrington laughed, a soft, practiced sound. Danger? From whom? Myself? My staff. She leaned forward slightly. Detective Eliza was flighty, sweet but fragile, always imagining shadows where there were none. Funny, Drake said, steel in his tone. She didn't sound fragile when she ran straight into the rain last night, right before a carriage nearly clipped me. The laughter faded. Lady Carrington set down her teacup with a quiet click. Perhaps you should speak to Edith, she said finally. She manages the maids. No one knows the household better. The housekeeper reappeared at the door like she'd been waiting all along. Edith, the silver-haired woman who'd greeted him. Her expression never shifted. Edith, show Detective Vane the servants' wing. The servants' wing was narrow and cold, stripped of ornament. Edith led him to a small door at the end of the hall. She opened it to reveal a room bare of personality. A narrow bed, a folded blanket, nothing more. Eliza's quarters, Edith said. You see, empty. She ran, just as Lady Carrington said. Drake stepped inside, crouching to study the floor. The boards were spotless, but not evenly so. Near the bed, one plank bore faint scratches, like it had been pried at. He touched it. Loose. Mind if I take a look? He asked. Edith's voice was calm, but cold. I'd rather you didn't disturb the mistress's house. Drake's knife flicked open with a practiced motion. He wedged it under the plank and lifted. Edith's lips thinned, but she didn't stop him. Beneath the board was a small cavity. Empty, save for a single object, a scrap of linen, folded small, with dark brown stains mottled across it. Blood. Old but unmistakable. Drake pocketed it, straightening slowly. His gaze locked with Edith's. You sure Eliza just ran? Her face betrayed nothing. Quite sure. But her eyes flicked just once toward the far end of the corridor, where another door stood slightly ajar. A door from which Drake thought he saw the faintest shadow move back, retreating. He closed his knife with a snap. Then I'll need to talk to the rest of your staff. Especially your perfect maid. Edith's lips pressed together, but she inclined her head. As you wish. And as Drake followed her down the corridor, he couldn't shake the feeling that every spotless wall, every polished banister, was hiding something rotten underneath. The servant corridors smelled faintly of soap and starch, the kind of chemical cleanliness that tried too hard to cover up something older. Drake's boots made little sound on the narrow planks as Edith led him to the last room on the hall. She stopped before a door painted a pale cream, her knuckles rapping twice before she opened it without waiting for an answer. Inside, the chamber looked more like a showroom than a servant's quarters. The bed was perfectly made, edges sharp enough to slice. A single book sat square on the nightstand, dustless. A pair of shoes gleamed under the bed, aligned like soldiers on parade. And standing at the window, straight-backed in her uniform, was the so-called perfect maid. You wish to see me, Edith? She asked, her voice even, soft, yet precise, each word delivered like it had been practiced. She turned, and her eyes fixed on Drake without surprise. This must be the detective. Drake studied her. She was younger than he'd expected, mid-20s, with hair the color of polished chestnut pinned into an immaculate coil. Not a wrinkle in her dress, not a stray hair out of place. But it was the eyes that caught him, gray, like his own, but colder, as if they had been trained to see and record everything without feeling it. Name? He asked. Lucy. Maid to Lady Carrington these 3 years. Some say you're perfect. A faint smile touched her lips, but never reached her eyes. I do my work well. That is all." Drake glanced at Edith. "Leave us." The housekeeper hesitated, then inclined her head and withdrew. The door shut softly, leaving the two of them in the immaculate silence. Drake stepped further into the room, his hands in his coat pockets. Eliza thought she was in danger here. Why? Lucy tilted her head slightly, as if considering how best to answer. Eliza was delicate. She was often unsettled. She spoke of hearing footsteps where there were none, whispers in the walls. She lacked discipline. The mistress was patient with her, but Eliza could not bear the order we live by. "Order," Drake repeated. He looked around the room again, every detail so deliberate it made his skin itch. "Funny, she wrote to me in perfectly ordered script, not the hand of a hysterical girl." Lucy's smile vanished. She folded her hands neatly before her. Perhaps she was more clever than she let on. "And what about this?" Drake pulled the blood-stained linen from his pocket, watching her eyes carefully. "Found it under her floorboard." For the first time, something flickered across Lucy's face, too quick to name but real. Then it was gone, smoothed away as if it had never been. "That is not Eliza's," she said calmly. "I have cleaned her linens myself. She kept nothing hidden." "But she hid this," Drake said. Silence stretched. The rain tapped the window like impatient fingers. Finally, Lucy spoke, her voice softer. "Detective, if Eliza gave you that letter, she trusted you. But trust can be dangerous in this house. Lady Carrington values loyalty above all else. Those who betray it rarely leave unscathed." Drake stepped closer, close enough to see the faint tremor in her hands despite the calm mask. "You're warning me," he said. Her eyes flicked to the door, then back to him. "I am telling you to be careful." The latch clicked. The door opened. Edith stood there once more, her expression tight. "Time's up, detective." Drake tucked the linen back into his coat and nodded. "For now." He followed Edith out, but his mind was already working. Lucy had lied, smoothly, precisely, but she'd lied. And the perfection of her room, her posture, her words, all of it felt like armor. The kind you only wore when there was something worth protecting or hiding. The kitchens of the Carrington estate were a different world altogether, hot, loud, alive with the clatter of pots and the hiss of steam. Drake leaned against the stone archway, watching the servants move with mechanical precision. No wasted steps, no chatter, just a symphony of efficiency. It was unsettling. He singled out a younger scullery maid carrying a tray of polished silver. Her hands shook ever so slightly, betraying nerves. Drake stepped in her path, his steel-gray eyes locking on hers. "Easy," he said softly, steadying the tray before it slipped. "What's your name?" The girl swallowed hard. "Mary, sir." "You knew Eliza." Her lips parted, then pressed shut like a trap snapping closed. She darted a glance toward the head cook, who barked orders at the staff without ever looking Drake's way. The message was clear: keep moving, don't speak. Drake took the tray from her hands and set it aside. "I'm not asking as your mistress's man. I'm asking as someone trying to find out why a girl begged me for help and then vanished. Did she say anything to you?" Mary's throat worked. She wrung her hands in her apron. She said there was a room." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "A room we're not supposed to know about. At night, sometimes, she'd hear things from behind the walls. Like someone crying." Drake's brow furrowed. "Where?" But before she could answer, Edith's shadow stretched across the kitchen floor. The housekeeper's voice cut like glass. "Detective Vane, you are not here to interrogate my staff." Drake turned slowly. "I thought I was here to find the truth." "The truth," Edith said coolly, "is that Eliza left. That is all. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have duties to attend to." Mary scurried away, vanishing into the rhythm of clattering pans. Drake let her go. He knew fear when he saw it. Later, as dusk bled into the estate, Drake found himself wandering the upstairs corridors alone. The rain had returned, pattering against the tall windows. He ran a hand along the wallpaper, feeling for seams, for hollow spaces. Eliza's words echoed in his mind, not from strangers, but from within the house where I serve, that they've almost lost beneath the rain. A sob. Drake froze, ear pressed to the wall. The sound was muffled, pained. He tapped lightly along the paneling, and sure enough, one section gave back a hollow thud. A concealed door. His knife slid easily into the seam, prying just enough to slip through. The panel swung open on silent hinges. Inside, darkness, stale air, and the smell of damp stone. He stepped into the passage, closing the panel behind him. The corridor stretched narrow and low, lit only by cracks of lightning flashing through hidden vents. And there, somewhere deeper within, the sobbing continued. "Hello," he called quietly. The sobbing stopped. Then, footsteps. Rapid, retreating. Drake's revolver was in his hand in an instant, his body low and ready. He followed, boots silent on the stone, each echo pulling him deeper into the secret bones of the Carrington estate. And as he rounded a bend, lightning revealed it for just an instant. A figure darting away, skirts trailing, hair unbound. Eliza, alive. She vanished into the dark before he could call her name. Drake quickened his pace, heart hammering, every sense sharpened. He'd found her. But in Ashford, finding someone was never the end. It was the beginning of something worse. The passage bent sharply, the stone walls sweating moisture, making the air taste of iron. Drake moved fast but careful, revolver up, listening for the faintest scuff ahead. Eliza's footsteps echoed like a ghost, too close, then too far, always just beyond reach. The corridor forked. Left, a steep stair spiraled downward into blackness. Right, a low arch opened onto a narrow gallery. Lightning lanced through a vent above, spilling light for the briefest instant, and in that instant Drake saw her. Eliza. She stood at the gallery's end, pale face haloed in stormlight, hair loose around her shoulders. Her eyes met his, wide, terrified, pleading. Her lips parted, shaping a single word he couldn't hear. Then the light was gone, and with it, her figure. Drake pushed forward. The gallery ended at a heavy oak door, barred from his side. He slid the bolt and shouldered through, emerging into a chamber that did not belong in a noble estate. It was bare stone, torch sconces mounted but unlit. In the center, an iron chair sat bolted to the floor, leather straps dangling. Chains hung from the ceiling like forgotten vines. The smell of mildew and something darker lingered. Drake's gut tightened. This wasn't just a passage, it was a room built to keep someone. Eliza! His voice carried, bouncing hollow off the walls. Something moved in the corner. Not Eliza. A man, gaunt, ragged, his eyes fever-bright in the dark. He crouched like a beaten dog, but when Drake's light caught him, he snarled, lips peeling back over yellowed teeth. His wrists were raw, the skin scarred from irons. Drake kept the revolver steady. Name. The man only shook his head violently, muttering. His words were half-coherent, fragments of prayer or madness. Perfect maid, perfect. She watches, she listens. Then a scream cut through the chamber. High, sharp. Eliza. Drake spun, bolting through the opposite archway, the sound pulling him forward like a wire in his chest. The passage narrowed, twisting, until he burst out into a hidden stair that climbed steeply. At the top, another door. He slammed it open, emerging into candlelight. The room was furnished. A small parlor, cozy on the surface, armchairs, a rug, lace curtains drawn. But sitting primly in one of those armchairs, as though she had been waiting, was Lucy, the perfect maid. Her hands were folded in her lap. A book rested on the side table. Her face was calm, almost serene. "Detective Vane," she said, her voice soft, smooth. "You shouldn't be here." Behind her, the door to another chamber stood ajar, and from within came the sound of muffled sobs. "Eliza," Drake growled. Lucy's eyes never left his. "She's not yours to save." His revolver didn't waver. "Step aside." The perfect maid smiled then, not kind, not cruel, just patient. "You think this is about Eliza, but it's not. It never was. It's about loyalty, about obedience. Eliza failed, and failures have no place in this house." Her hand moved toward her apron pocket. Drake's finger tightened on the trigger. In the stillness, the storm outside broke with a crack of thunder, shaking the glass in its frames. And somewhere very close, Eliza cried out his name. Drake's revolver stayed trained on Lucy, but she didn't flinch. Her hand, half slipped into her apron, froze. The candlelight threw her shadow tall across the wall, and it looked more like a knife than a maid. "Eliza," Drake said, voice low. "Where is she?" Lucy's smile was almost tender. "Behind that door. But she doesn't need saving. Not from me. Not from anyone." The muffled sobbing behind the ajar door cut through the air again. Eliza's voice, thin, shaking. "Drake, please." His muscles coiled. "Pocket." Slowly. Lucy withdrew her hand, holding a small glass vial pinched between her fingers. The liquid inside shimmered pale green, catching the flicker of the candle. "Poison," she said, as if naming a friend. "A mistress keeps many tools, detective. Some blunt, some sharp. This one, subtle. Kind." Drake took a step forward, revolver steady. "Drop it." Lucy set the vial delicately on the table beside her, then folded her hands once more. "You think I'm the villain here? That I'm hiding your Eliza? But tell me, why do you think she ran to you?" Drake's jaw tightened. "Because she was afraid." Lucy tilted her head, eyes like gray glass. "Afraid of... but not of me. Not of Lady Carrington either. Afraid of what she'd done. Of what she'd become." Drake didn't answer. He moved toward the inner door, revolver covering Lucy with each step. Her calm gaze followed him, unblinking. He pushed the door open. The chamber beyond was small, windowless, its wallpaper faded to yellow. And there, huddled in the corner, was Eliza. Her cloak was gone, her dress torn at the hem, her face streaked with tears. When she saw him, she scrambled forward on hands and knees, clutching his coat as though it were a lifeline. "You came," she whispered. "God, you came." Drake holstered the revolver with one hand and steadied her with the other. "You're safe now." But her eyes, wild, haunted, met his, and she shook her head violently. "No, you don't understand. I killed him." The words dropped like stone into water. The sobbing silence that followed felt heavier than any gunshot. Behind him, Lucy's voice floated through the doorway, calm as the ticking of a clock. "There it is. The truth she begged you for. Not protection. Not rescue. Confession." Drake looked down at Eliza. Her hands clung to his coat, knuckles white. Her lips trembled as she tried to force the words out again. "I didn't mean to. I swear, I didn't mean to." Drake's steel-gray eyes flicked between the trembling girl and the maid who sat composed as a queen. The walls of the Carrington estate seemed to close in tighter with every heartbeat. Someone had died in this house. Someone Eliza believed she had killed. And the perfect maid knew every detail. Eliza's words trembled in the air like a candle about to gutter out. "I killed him," she whispered again, her voice raw, almost broken. Drake lowered himself to her level, one hand bracing her shoulder. "Who, Eliza?" His voice was steady, the same tone he used on soldiers in the trenches who'd seen too much blood. "Tell me." Her lips parted, eyes darting to the doorway as though afraid Lucy might cut the words from her mouth. Finally, she choked them out. "Sir Geoffrey Carrington." The name rattled the silence like shattered glass. Drake's expression didn't move, but his pulse ticked faster. Sir Geoffrey? Lady Carrington's late husband. The official record had said stroke. Respectable, natural. The kind of death that closed a chapter without scandal. But if Eliza spoke true, the story had never been clean. Behind them, Lucy's calm voice seeped through the doorway. "Do you see now, detective? Do you understand why she hides in shadow? Why I keep her here?" Drake rose slowly, revolver back in his hand, his gaze sharp as a blade. "I understand one thing. The truth's been buried, and someone in this house holds the shovel." Eliza clutched his coat tighter, her voice breaking. "It was an accident. I swear it was. He came to me that night, drunk. I tried to fight him off. There was a struggle, and then..." She squeezed her eyes shut. He fell. His head struck the fireplace. The blood. Her whole body shook, as if the memory itself was striking her all over again. Drake kept his tone quiet. And Lucy found you. Yes, Eliza whispered. She cleaned everything. She told me no one would ever know. But, her voice hitched. I can't live like this. Every day I see his face. Lucy stepped into the room now, calm as ever, hands folded neatly before her. And yet, without me, the poor girl would have been hanged months ago. Would you call that villainy, detective? Or loyalty? Drake's revolver shifted slightly toward her. That depends on who else was in on the lie. Lucy's smile was faint. Ashford society thrives on lies. This one simply spared a young life. But if you mean Lady Carrington, she paused, eyes glinting. She knew nothing, and she never will, unless you choose to tell her. The words hung like a knife between them. Drake's gaze moved between the two women. Eliza, broken, guilty, begging for release. Lucy, composed, sharp, her loyalty as much a cage as a shield. He exhaled through his nose. There's something you're both forgetting. Lucy arched a brow. Oh. Drake's voice hardened. Accidents don't explain poison vials hidden in aprons. For the first time, Lucy's expression flickered. Just for a breath. Eliza's head jerked up, confusion breaking through her fear. Poison? Lucy? And in that instant, Drake knew the story had one more layer still buried beneath the marble floors of Carrington House. The storm outside hammered against Carrington House as though Ashford itself wanted in on the truth. The shutters rattled. Thunder rolled. But inside the drawing room, silence pressed heavier than any weather. Lucy stood perfectly still, her hands folded like she was at prayer. Eliza clung to Drake's coat, trembling. And Drake, revolver at his side now, watched them both with the eyes of a man who'd seen too many layers of lies peel away in blood. Poison, he said again, his voice low, deliberate. Not a word you mistake. I found the vial hidden in Eliza's apron. A coward's weapon, clean and quiet. A way to finish what blunt force couldn't. Eliza's head shook frantically. No, I never. I swear, detective, I never touched poison in my life. Her eyes flooded with tears. Lucy, tell him. You know I didn't. Lucy's face was calm, but Drake caught the tightening of her jaw, the way her fingers flexed slightly before stilling again. She glanced at Eliza as one might glance at a wounded bird. My dear, Lucy said softly, you've suffered enough. Let me bear this. Eliza blinked, stunned. Lucy, what are you saying? Drake stepped forward, voice like steel. Say it plain. Lucy's eyes lifted to meet his, steady and unafraid. Sir Geoffrey did not die by accident, detective. Not entirely. When he fell, he still breathed. I saw the rise of his chest. The blood loss should have taken him, but slowly. And he would have woken. He would have called the household. Eliza would have been ruined, tried, convicted. Her hand tightened against her skirts. So I fetched the vial. A single measure of digitalis from the medicine stores. Quite certain. Eliza's gasp broke the stillness like glass. Tell you, oh God. Drake's eyes narrowed. You silenced him. To save her. To save her, Lucy repeated, her voice without tremor. I am her shadow, detective. Her sin-eater. Whatever she could not carry, I carried for her. I will carry this too. The thunder cracked above them, rattling the chandeliers. Drake studied her for a long moment. And Lady Carrington? Lucy's lips curved faintly, almost bitterly. Her ladyship never asked. I never told. That is how loyalty works. Eliza stumbled forward, falling to her knees before Drake, her tears staining the hem of his coat. Please, please don't let them take her. She did it for me. If anyone hangs, it should be me. Drake crouched, his revolver lowering until it clicked back into its holster. His steel-gray eyes softened just enough to let humanity show through. No one's hanging, he said quietly. Not tonight. Both women froze, staring at him. He stood, his coat settling around him like a shadow. I've seen battlefields and I've seen courts. Both are graves for the innocent. This, he nodded toward them, toward the truth tangled like barbed wire. This is bigger than rope and gallows. The law would chew you up and spit you out without ever asking who you were trying to protect. Lucy's voice was flat. So what will you do, detective? Look away. Drake met her gaze, the stormlight flashing in his eyes. No, I'll write it the way it should have been from the start. Geoffrey Carrington, dead by accident. His vices caught him before the world could. Eliza, nothing more than a frightened maid in the wrong place. And you? His gaze hardened slightly. A woman who serves too well. Lucy inhaled sharply, and for the first time her composure cracked. You would carry this for us? Drake's hand brushed the brass watch on his wrist, the cracked glass glinting. I carry a lot of things. The storm raged louder, but inside, it was as if a veil had lifted. Eliza sobbed with relief. Lucy closed her eyes, bowing her head as though in silent prayer. Drake turned toward the door. But hear me, he said without looking back. If I ever find you with poison again, Lucy, I won't write the ending in your favor. And with that, he walked into the storm, his silhouette swallowed by thunder and rain. The Carrington house secrets remained sealed, but only because Drake Vane chose to bear their weight. The rain chased Drake all the way back into Ashford, where the tram lines hissed like serpents in the storm. By the time he reached his flat above the tea shop, the coal lamps in the street were bleeding halos into the downpour. He lit no lamps inside. The room smelled faintly of bergamot and wet wool. He shrugged off his coat, hung his revolver in its place by the desk, and set the cracked brass watch down beside his oilskin notebook. The pages were already damp, but he uncapped his pen and began to write anyway. His hand was steady, precise. Carrington, Geoffrey. Found dead. Official cause, accidental fall. Secondary injuries consistent with blunt force against the stone stair. No foul play to be recorded. He paused, staring at the words until they blurred. His pen hovered, then scratched again, lower on the page, words meant for no one's eyes but his own. Truth. Sir Geoffrey would have lived. Lucy Carrington, maid, shadow, guardian, delivered him to death with her own hand, a dose of digitalis. Not malice, not ambition, devotion, the kind that stains the soul blacker than blood. Another pause. Rain drummed against the glass, harder now, like a warning. I chose to leave it buried. The courts would not have seen loyalty. They would only have seen murder. Ashford breeds enough ghosts without me making more. He capped the pen, leaned back in his chair, and reached for the bottle of coal-aged whiskey. The glass caught the stormlight, trembling in his grip for the first time that night. Drake raised it in silence, not in toast but in penance, then let the burn roll down his throat. Somewhere below, in the tea shop, the bell on the door rang. A customer this late? He frowned, setting the glass aside, listening to the creak of footsteps on the stairs. 3 knocks. So deliberate. Drake's hand drifted back toward the Webley on its hook. Detective Vane? A woman's voice, muffled by the door. Not Eliza's. Not Lucy's. Something older, richer, carrying both fatigue and command. He stood, coat still dripping rainwater, and opened the door. On the threshold stood Lady Carrington herself, veiled in mourning black. Her eyes glinted with a steel that no storm could smother. "We need to talk," she said. And just like that, Drake knew the Carrington affair wasn't over. Lady Carrington stepped into Drake's flat without waiting for permission, the storm curling in around her like a cloak before he shut the door. She carried herself as if the world owed her silence, and it obeyed. Even the rain seemed to hush in her presence. Drake didn't offer her a seat. He leaned against the desk, revolver just within reach, and waited. "You've already lied for me," she said, her veil trembling as she breathed. "Or rather, some Lucy, lies. My servants." Drake's jaw flexed, but he said nothing. "I know what you did," she continued. "You turned truth into a prettier story. For mine." Her gaze sharpened, like glass catching firelight. "Why?" Drake poured himself another measure of whiskey, the liquid catching in the stormlight. "Because the law doesn't see devotion, only death. And I've seen enough young women turn to kindling for the bonfire of justice." He drank, slow and steady. "Your house is haunted enough. No need to feed it another ghost." Lady Carrington's lips curved, though it was not a smile. You think mercy is a shield? You think you've spared them? She leaned forward, voice low. No, detective. You've bound them tighter. Lucy will never leave this city now. Eliza will never know freedom. Their chains are forged from your silence. Drake met her stare, steel gray to steel gray. Better chains than a noose. For the first time, Lady Carrington's poise flickered. She turned away, her gloved hands trembling just enough for him to notice. Perhaps, or perhaps you've merely postponed the inevitable. In Ashford, nothing stays buried. Her words hung in the air, heavier than the storm. She drew her veil closer, the mourning cloth swallowing her face again. There are others, detective. Families. Houses. Secrets. Carrington was only the beginning. If you keep choosing silence, you'll drown in it. Drake's hand brushed the cracked brass watch on his desk. His voice was calm, deliberate. Then I'll drown standing up. Lady Carrington studied him one last time, as if searching for a chink in his armor. Finding none, she turned, opened the door, and vanished into the rain without another word. Drake stood in the quiet she left behind. The storm outside raged, but it was nothing compared to the storm inside his chest. He wrote one final line in his notebook before closing it. Mercy is a knife. Sharp enough to cut. Sharp enough to bleed. Tonight I chose mercy. Tomorrow who knows? And with that he killed the lamp, letting the darkness of Ashford core swallow him whole. You've just heard The Carrington Affairs, written and narrated for Audible Archives. I'm Rob, your host. In Ashford, justice and mercy rarely walk the same road, and sometimes the silence you choose becomes the sharpest truth of all. If this story held you in its shadows, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support keeps these cases alive and ensures Detective Vane's next descent into Ashford's secrets will find its way to you. Until then, stay sharp and stay listening.
Another chapter closes, but the archives remain, waiting for the next seeker of stories. Here, no voice is lost, no tale truly ends. This is Audible Archives. Until we meet again, may your mind wander freely and your heart never forget the stories we share.